Hey friends, Aram Cho here, and on this episode of the 911 Strong podcast, we have a very special guest. That's right, it's Tamron Olden from Law Enforcement Social. We're going to talk about the do's and don'ts when it comes to cops and agencies and social media, and we're going to talk about trends and what to do if you're thinking about being a social media personality or starting a social media platform for your agency. All right, stay tuned. The next episode of the 911 Strong podcast starts right now.
Station to all units.
Prepare to copy.
You're listening to the 911 Strong podcast.
Don't act like I never told you.
With Aram and Kristen, bringing you stimulating discussion.
No, I like the sound of that.
An entertaining conversation.
And now, here's Kristen and Aram.
Hey friends, welcome back to the 911 Strong podcast. With me, as always, is Kristen. No nickname
Good
today.
job.
I got yelled at. I don't know if you've been listening to the last few episodes, but I've been referring to Kristen to her high school Chola nicknames. So if you want to know the story behind that, catch up with our previous few episodes and you'll get a kick out of that. Joining us today is a very special guest. She's not only a professional in the industry, but she's a personal friend of ours. Thanks for joining us, Tamron. We have Tamron Olden.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Good morning to my Chola friend over there.
What up, girl?
What were you like in high school, Tamron? I suspect that you were probably like student council, maybe a cheerleader.
You know what's funny is that a lot of people assume that, but I really wasn't involved in school a lot. Unfortunately, I had to work at a young age to help provide and support my family. So I was working a lot and just doing school stuff. So I didn't get to do a lot of the fun stuff. College, I made up for it a little bit though. I feel like I kind of redeemed myself and made up for it in college. I had a little fun there.
A little wild in college. Awesome. Well, for our friends that aren't familiar with Tamron's got a great social media platform, and she should because she's an expert in the field.
Yes.
For the past several years, she's been helping law enforcement agencies across the country develop and really produce their platforms on social media, their presence. As you know, law enforcement's kind of resistant to social media, but with the help of people like Tamron, they've really come around and accepted the fact that social media is a very useful tool.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that, Tamron?
Well, as most special assignments, ancillary assignments happen, or agencies like to take advantage of the other duties as assigned clause in our job descriptions. Back when social media started way back in the day, I was working for an agency here in Southern California doing community outreach stuff. Chief calls me in the office and says, so we're supposed to do this social media thing. It's important. We need to do that and be better at media relations. So that kind of seems like something that you'd be good at. So here you go. And literally that's how it happened. So I had zero training, zero experience outside of just personal use. And I was voluntold to start and take over social media way back in the day before agencies really had a presence online. So I had to go to the University of YouTube and search around online and figure out how the heck I was going to try and manage law enforcement social media stuff. And then just kind of fell in love with it and ended up starting to teach and consult and work with agencies. So, but yeah, that's how I got started.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. You joke about the University of YouTube, but it's a valid point. You don't have to have a formal education to excel in something. You might just have a natural talent. And I think that's the case for you, Tamron. You have a natural talent in this, and it's very apparent because not only do you have credibility, but some of the largest agencies in the country are utilizing your services. And so you started off doing this for your small agency. How did you go from your agency to traveling the country to teach this stuff?
So kind of a funny story with that as well. So Law Enforcement Social was already established. One of my good friends, Mikey B, you guys know Mike, and Mark Marty, they, both officers in the same boat, got voluntold to do social media, and they had started doing teaching on the side because they fell in love with doing that and had a passion for it. Mike, I had met at a PIO school. So we would just kind of collaborate, help each other out, network. And he called me, he's like, hey, I got subpoenaed for court. We have this class in Long Beach that we're hosting. I need someone to step in and help teach. Are you willing to help me out? And I said, sure. So I literally showed up to class, not knowing what the heck the curriculum was, not really knowing what was going on, and took a look at the agenda real quick in the PowerPoint and did the class. And then Mike said, yeah, I heard the class went well. Do you want to stay on as an instructor? And so that's how I got started doing that. And then fast forward, last year, I took over the company completely, and have been able to grow it and merge it and transition into the PR company.
That's pretty cool. You went from substituting and now you took over.
And your new company is Talk PR, right?
Yeah, PR, Talk Public Relations. So we've expanded a little bit. We started getting into website development for departments because we know that most department websites are atrocious, if they even have one. Super outdated, like circa 1980s style, works horrible on a phone. So we started doing that, and then got into, because recruitment is huge right now, everyone's hiring. So then everyone wanted recruitment photos and video, and then communications consulting. And so it kind of evolved into a full PR firm versus just the teaching stuff. So I think COVID was definitely an eye-opener for a lot of agencies who realized, oh crap, I can't communicate with people in person, and my community outreach efforts are now going to be forced online, and we're horrible on social media and we're horrible on our website. So that, I think, really did a lot for bringing to light the importance of using online communications at departments.
So you think that because of COVID, then it kind of took down a lot of walls from the people who are, I guess, the older generation that's very anti-social media and anti, anything Instagram, Facebook, or are they shying away? Because Facebook's an older generation for the most part, right?
Right.
So now starting to utilize Instagram a lot more from the more stubborn agencies.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that they realized that their hands were tied and the community was demanding information. And so, what do? You can't have in-person meetings, neighborhood watch meetings. I mean, let's be honest. I was working with an agency yesterday about doing their community relations. And we were talking about the in-person neighborhood watch meetings, the traditional outreach, and then also the online stuff. And I said, let's be honest, you guys. I said, anytime that I show up to a neighborhood watch meeting or a coffee with a cop, there's usually more officers and staff there than there's community members. It's just a different time. Yet you go and you live stream and do a virtual neighborhood watch or virtual coffee with a cop, you have hundreds and thousands of people that you're going to reach. So I think that the sheer fact that agencies were forced to do online communications, and then realize that their staff, that they either didn't have adequate staff, training, equipment, support, funding, budgets. People who do social media for agencies, for the most part, unless you're a big agency, it's the bastard unit that gets the leftover equipment. If they're lucky, they're working off their personal phones and they have zero budget, yet they're supposed to be the face and the image of the department. And so I do really feel that one of the silver linings of everything that happened last year and this year is that they realized the importance of social media and being on trends. Like you said, a lot of agencies, it's funny, when I travel out of state, they're not on Instagram. They're behind. They're only on Facebook. And if you look at the analytics, that's not necessarily the generation you do want to communicate with them, but you're really missing out by not being on those other platforms.
What do you think agencies are so hesitant? I mean, it seems like law enforcement was the last, profession to embrace social media. And I mean, when I say embrace, I'm talking about maybe a quarter of the agencies in existence actually embrace it, and everybody else kind of has a small presence. But why do you think that is?
I think it's the mentality of keeping everything confidential, not letting the public knowing what to do. Even you still do with a lot of agencies, even with media relations, no comment, don't give anything out to the public. So it's that old school mentality. And also think about the generations who are the people who are the decision makers, your command staff members. Those are your decision makers that supervise and oversee things like social media, communications, media relations. And they didn't come up through the ranks understanding the value in that. They didn't learn that stuff in the academy. Now Command College and SLI and a lot of these supervisor schools, I go and teach with and work with the agencies to get them on board, but it's a new language. There's a big generation gap. And I think as younger members move up through the ranks that kind of understand the quote unquote language of social media, it's going to become more the norm, but it's just something that they didn't grow up with and they don't use day to day. But if you think about a lot of the agencies and their needs online, they're using it for recruitment purposes. Where are your recruits at? They're not going to go and pick up Law Enforcement Today outside the chief's office and read an article about your agency that's hiring. They're going to see a cool photo or video on Instagram and go, oh, that agency looks cool. They look like they're progressive. They're innovative. They have a lot to offer, and they're judging you. And the concept of marketing and branding with law enforcement, people just can't grasp that concept. But the reality of it is most people's perceptions are going to be formed of your agency, not by an in-person interaction. It's going to be what they see online about you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think an identity needs to be established at agencies. I mean, some agencies are serious. And then you have some agencies that utilize social media for the PR. They do the comedic skits, they do the dance challenges. And I think that really goes to, it testifies a bit on the personalities of the administration.
Mm-hmm.
But, at our agency in particular, we utilize it for, bulletins and stuff like that, announcements.
But it's never consistent. Like if an officer is murdered, within our country, or even the last fallen Marines, I don't think we did anything for.
Right.
And then every now and then they'll put one person in, and then after that, the next one, they won't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
We don't put anything that our task, like our special enforcement teams do. Like, hey, they're going out, they're getting all this stuff done. They're working hard. They don't give out the credit to show like, hey, all of our officers, look at what they're doing out in the field. They're actively doing things to protect the community, and it's more like, hey, we had what are those nights called? We had a
national night out.
A national night out. And then,
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe you both agree with this. But I think the reason why we have that at our agencies like ours and our agency specifically is there's too many hands in the pot. I think the person running social media needs to be a person. I don't think you can have that many different people, because now you don't know, you're not on the same page, and you don't know, hey, we need to do something about the 13 fallen soldiers. And maybe someone assumes that somebody else already did it. Now you don't see it. What do you think?
Well, the thing is, I really do see, and you bring up a good point, is consistently inconsistent is truly what I see with the departments. You get exactly like Aaron said, it's too many hands. It's not a unified voice. And I know because I'm familiar now with the different agencies and who's involved with the social media, I'll know I'm like, oh yeah, that was not so-and-so's post. And I would always teach the dispatchers, because the dispatchers on the team, it's like all caps and abbreviations. And I'm like, turn the caps key off. Why are you yelling at everybody? So you can tell who is posting by the way that they speak, the tone, the style, and you need to have a unified voice, and you need to have that consistency. And you also need to understand that the community needs to know, like you said, Kristen, about some of the day-to-day things and the challenges that agencies are dealing with. It's frustrating when officers are trying so hard to get community support. They're already under a ton of scrutiny, and they're trying to show, hey, you guys, this is some of the day-to-day stuff that we deal with. This is the reality of our job. We need your support for funding. We need you to be there for us. We need you to be advocates for us. We don't want you guys to defund us. Yet they're not seeing the day-to-day. They're seeing National Night Out and Neighborhood Watch, and that you're hiring.
Yeah.
What else do they have to base it on? And what I've been seeing now, and agencies are probably not going to be happy that I'm even mentioning or suggesting this, is that the unions are now stepping up and creating their own social media platforms and going, okay, if the agency is not going to have my back and isn't going to go and let the community know the crap that we're dealing with every day, then guess what? We're going to do it under the union, where we have certain protections and we have the ability to have our own voice, which can be good and bad. but it's forcing their hand to go, we need a voice. We need people to really understand the reality of what we're doing. And if you don't do it for us, then we're going to go and do it ourselves.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that's the case at our agency right now.
Yeah. And it cracks me up because, right, like everybody's fallback with any new introduction into anything for police work is always, well, money. It costs too much. Well, actually, this is pretty much free. I mean, depending on how far into it you want to go, but it's free, and it's nice to hear that there are some agencies that include their dispatchers, because we're the first ones that hear about the roads being shut down, or, because there's a shooting and there's so many streets blocked off. Like, we could be when time permits, obviously, we could be the first ones to put that up there, but they don't want our hand in the pot. It's all the other hands, that wants to keep it to themselves. I don't know what their reasoning is, but I mean, going back to also like defunding the police and everything, it's always the first programs to go are the programs that build relationships with the community. And here's, again, going back to it being free, the social media aspect that builds your relationship because you're keeping in touch with them, and it's for free too.
Yeah, exactly. And I get, and the enforcement function of law enforcement will always take precedence. Like, I never want to say, oh, posting on social media is more important and you should give more funding than, the Investigations Bureau or SWAT or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but if you think about the amount of influence and the importance that communications have, if you really think about it and you've studied it, the agencies that have had more civil unrest, have had people wanting to defund them, and have had the most amount of issues, they have big deficiencies in their community outreach and their social media and their media relations. I mean, that's factual. The agencies that continually invest in those relationships, in ongoing communication with their community, which is way more cost effective. There's a prevention aspect of it. And there's also the community support to be able to get funding. So like you said, it's not even a cost issue. And if you think about the consequences of civil unrest, of public distrust, I mean, really, it's a no-brainer. But I think that people just aren't thinking of it in that way.
Yeah,
I agree. I think, to Kristen's point, if you identify somebody, whether it's a dispatcher, records clerk, or officer, that's good at social media, I mean, they're probably good at it because they're passionate about it. They're on it anyway. And they'll probably do it as a collateral without any extra incentives whatsoever. So I think it's important for agencies to identify talent at their agency, responsible talent. Obviously, there needs to be a little bit of oversight. But it doesn't make any sense if you have somebody that's good at it, and just because they're a dispatcher, not be allowed to be on there.
I'm sure there might be other reasons, but
All right, let's shift gears just a little bit. We talked about agency social media. What do you think about individual officers, individual dispatchers, people within law enforcement that make their own personal accounts? Is that good? Is that bad? And what do you think about agencies that try to censor them?
That's actually a really big topic right now. It's hard because there's no solid laws out there that really dictate, and policies are all over the place. You have your standard Lexipol policy that a lot of agencies use, but then they're running into unique challenges like this, and they don't have anything to refer to. There's also a lot of litigation on both sides. There's officers we've seen it, who are in IA investigations, who they've tried to fire, and we've seen people win on both sides. We've seen the agencies being able to fire officers and some of their staff members, even civilian staff members, for some of the stuff they're doing on their personal social media. And we've also seen officers being able to successfully defend themselves and keep their jobs. So there really is no set concrete, recommendation on that you could refer to legally. My personal opinion, obviously, is going to be different. I feel that, yes, obviously, public safety personnel, they're held to a higher standard even when they're off duty. I get that. There is the issue of conduct unbecoming or going and slandering your department. Absolutely. But I do think that people should be able to have should be able to have a right to their own opinion, as long as it is in line with being professional, not anything inappropriate or that's going to have a negative reflection on the department. You also have to think, a lot of people put disclaimers in their social media profiles that say, the opinions on my page are not a reflection of the department, but they're posting photos of them on duty. They have photos in their profile, even of them in uniform. So the public perception of, hey, you're going and you're posting and you're on the clock in a department uniform, in a department unit, I can see how there can be that perception that your personal opinions can be perceived by the public as being that of the department. It's a hard one. And then I also think about it, we all have families, we have our personal opinions. Is it worth it? And that's a personal decision that you have to make, to go and put my personal opinions out there and risk losing my ability to provide for my kids. And that's a hard one, because it's like, do you stand your ground and go, no, this is, to me, it's, I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm going to advocate and have a voice for my opinions personally on certain things, on politics, on, a lot of the sensitivities. Obviously, this last 2 years has brought to light a lot of division online and a lot of personal opinions. But when I teach my classes, I tell people, go and Google police officer fired over social media post, and you will see page after page after page. Some of it where I'm like, oh yeah, they were an idiot. They deserve to be fired. That's a no-brainer. But some of them I'm like, I don't know. So that's really, to me, I always default that there's litigation and wins on both sides. So you're taking that risk. Be professional. If you're going to get your social media profile brought up when you're in court and you're testifying, and you're able to stand by the words that you put out there personally, and that it's not going to impact your ability to do your job ethically. And then also, are you going to take that personal risk of losing your job, going through litigation, all the stress? Or for me, hey, if you know me, you know my personal opinion. So I've dealt with clients that have posted their personal opinions through their company pages, and they've had to shut down their businesses. Yeah. So that's some of the things that you really have to weigh. You see both sides of it. I really do.
Yeah, you got to be really smart, and it's going to be a combination of your department allowing you to be on social media, number one, because they can clearly tell you shut it down. It's in the Lexipol policy, but at the same time, it's a balance between your First Amendment rights and just being smart. And if you're focusing only on getting traction with your followers just for growth, you'll probably get distracted from your job survivability. You got to be careful with it. And it's no secret that Kristen and I, on our pages, we're very open about our faith and politics. But I think at the same time, we're not saying anything too radical to get us to the point of being fired. And I think that's just a combination of experience, making mistakes and learning from them, and at the same time being smart about it as well, because we could say a lot more.
I definitely tone it down a lot.
Yeah. And you're not going, and also I think where people get in trouble is when they're in their unit, on the clock, in a uniform, going and speaking about these things, and there's not that separation, and you guys do a good job of balancing that. I really feel
that kind of irks me. That I get that. I totally do. And I don't post on duty anymore. But I think there's a time and place for that. People in the city that we work in know who we are. And even outside the city, we go to community events all the time, or, law enforcement related events. They know who we are. I think at agencies if they've got talented individuals in social media and they've developed a recognizable personality, I think agencies can take advantage of that and use them for, to their advantage. I don't see why there's distance. I can see, for liability reasons why they may want a distance, but do you think there's a place for individuals that have maybe developed themselves as a sole personality to combine their talents with their agencies, public relations, social media?
I do think there's a lot of benefit to it. And, to be honest, people like the personal side, that seeing a department post with their vanilla post and here's just information about the department, there's no face or human touch behind it, versus you have someone who can share their messages as an individual. They're relatable. It does really help foster relationships. I think that the gray area comes with combining some of the more controversial personal topics. And then also if somebody has a business behind it. And I actually had dealt with that before, where I was going and posting, I was talking about stuff related to work and had even posted on duty, or photos of me at work. And they even had said, well, you also use your platform to where there's a business aspect to it. So that's where you can kind of a little bit of a gray area, where if you're doing a business and there's some sort of a profitability, that obviously you can get into trouble with that. But there's other agencies out there that allow you to have personal department pages where it could be a little bit more about you. You can incorporate some of the personal stuff that you're involved with, and then kind of have that blend, which I think would be a good compromise. Because if you're representing the agency, then anything that you're going to say, people can go and misconstrue as an official statement from the department.
Yeah, that's a good point, because Kristen and I actually both had to submit outside employment waivers.
Right.
Manager, because we do profit. I hate to say that because it sounds such like we're sellouts, but we do profit from our social.
Yeah.
Important for people listening that are thinking about growing as a social media personality.
Yeah.
But there are legal aspects to it and policy and procedure aspects that you have to be really aware of. That's where your class comes in. I attended a class over at, I think you were hosting it as a Azusa Pete one day with Mike, and Marty was there as well. And I really learned a lot about some of the legal aspects behind it and what kind of risk you're putting yourself at. So people can definitely. Yeah. So another shifting in gears, you mentioned personality and PD's pages. I got to really talk about this organization.
I haven't watched that one. I have a different favorite.
Oh, wait, maybe I got the wrong one. It is a beach PD, isn't it?
It is, but it's Seal Beach.
Seal
PD.
Beach. Oh my.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I love them.
Okay.
If I could hug whoever their media person is, I totally would, because that person cracks me up every day. They're like just on it.
Their agency's well aware they're posting very smart, I would say sarcastic, but very smart responses.
I say they're fun.
They're absolutely fun. But do you think that's a combination of agency support, or do you think they're just not aware that they're doing it?
Oh, they're aware that they're doing it.
So I chat with them all the time. I messaged them yesterday because when I had that person making that fake account using my stuff, Seal Beach reported it for me. So I love them, chat with them. I actually, when I teach, bring up their accounts and their stories, their mail calls or mail posts that they do to kind of spark conversation. And would that fly at 99% of our departments? No. But I do think that there is something to say. They do get a lot of positive feedback, and you have to know your community. Some stuff might work well in one community, and then in another community, it won't. I like being able to have a little bit of a pushback in that people feel these, social media trolls, keyboard gangsters that like to run their mouth and go and just basically talk crap on department pages, and the agencies do nothing to defend themselves. And it's like, hold on, I want the public to have an opinion. And hey, maybe you had a negative interaction and you have justification to be pissed off at our agency, but you can't sit there and slander and discriminate and use profanity and lie and spread misinformation. We're going to call you out on that. And I absolutely love anytime their little highlight thing is lit up. Them and CHP West Valley are like my top two that I always have to go. It's like FOMO. I'm gonna miss if I don't run over to their pages, right?
Yeah, they do great. So in that then, they're reposting their DMs from their mail call, right? So what about when they do a general post, an actual hard post, and they get negative comments in there? Do you leave those comments? Do you respond to those comments, or you just ignore the comments or delete them? Delete them?
I'm thinking you delete them.
Well, I'm just saying for other I've heard you don't delete the comments, but I'm just saying for people listening that you do.
There are a lot of legal legal issues with that. And I actually get a lot of people asking me about that as well. Legal stuff, just with how people are so sensitive these days on social media, is probably one of the top things I get questions about. I'm actually adding a new class just on legal stuff because I get asked so much. So I like to call it, instead of a matrix of response, a hatrix, because like when the haters come on board, then you kind of have this like, it almost reminds me of like the use of force continuum, like, you know, levels of escalation in dealing with the trolls. So for me, the first thing is legally, you have to have a terms of use. So if your department has social media and doesn't have terms of use, which is basically the rules for your page, and then you go and you moderate someone, that's where you get sued, and that's where your department's writing a check. And there are several examples of that. There's even local ones in Southern California where there's been cases where someone goes and posts something negative. They go and they remove it, they delete it, they censor the person, they block the person, and then they go and they get sued because they don't have terms of use on their page. So the first level of protection for your department is terms of use. Here's what you can do on our page. Here's what you can't do. You can't use profanity. You can't go and discriminate against people. You can't incite violence. You know, so there's about a dozen things. When I teach, I share samples and kind of a template that agencies can copy and paste and use for their agencies. So let's say someone pops up and they violate one of your terms of use. They're going and they're writing discriminatory stuff. It's racist or discriminating. They're using profanity. So completely inappropriate. Strike one. Hey, thanks for following and engaging on our page, but we don't tolerate that. It's in violation of our terms of use. If you want to edit your comment, I'd be happy to leave it on there. They don't do that. Strike two. You go offline. So you go on stage where they're wanting an audience and attention, taking the attention away from them and going offline and sending them a private message. Hey, I wanted to follow up. Your activity is in violation of our terms of use. We're going to give you one last opportunity to correct it. If you have a legitimate complaint, here's our complaint process, and you can contact our watch commander, or if you have an online complaint form or whatnot, and then they're done. So that's kind of the, I guess you would say, escalation where that you're going through the levels of response. So one, you can get sued, and the other part of it is archiving it. So if you go and delete it, remove them, and then after the fact, they go and there's a Public Records Act request, and it includes your social media, and you deleted it, you're going to get in trouble there. So it's kind of a sticky situation and you can moderate people. They cannot just come and do whatever they want, but they can also have a right to an opinion as long as it's following the rules. And the example that I give people is, can someone show up to a council meeting or a board of supervisors meeting and go up to the podium and say, hey, mayor, I think you're an idiot, you're incompetent, you don't deserve this position, you're a failure, and I think you should resign. Absolutely, they can. It's no different. They can go and they could do it on your social media as well, as long as they're following the rules. So as much as we want to sit there and say, hey, we want to protect our freedom of speech on our personal social media, that also applies to the public. And unfortunately, they don't always have the nicest things to say about us.
Yeah, if you're a government page, if you're a government page, you can't censor.
Mm-hmm.
But to agencies that don't have their own personal terms of use, would the platform's terms of service apply? So if it's a violation of Instagram or Facebook's terms of service, can you delete those comments?
You have to declare your page as a limited public forum, that it's not just an open public forum. The individual platforms' terms of use, one, they do not enforce or moderate fairly. We all know about the censorship with that they conveniently moderate certain things and not others. So they would have to be the ones to assist with enforcing that, which we can't rely on. And theirs doesn't include a lot of the extra stuff that a custom terms of use would have. So although it's okay to defer, and actually I do link out, hey, you also have to follow Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok's terms of use. It's very, very limited. It's not going to really allow you the ability to deal with people if there is an extreme case where you need to remove someone's posts on or comments on your account.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's obviously a lot to consider if you're an agency listening right now, or if you're an individual that wants to start social media. It's not like hop on, this is what you do. You've got a lot background work to do. So if someone wants to attend one of your classes or reach out to you, if they're an agency that says, hey, we don't have anybody that's talented in this social media world, and we want to hire someone like you at Talk PR to come in and run our social media, how do they get a hold of you?
So you can reach out to me personally on my social media, Tamron Olden, TamrinOlden, or you can go over to talkpublicrelations.com. We have all of our services there, obviously a contact form, and our classes are hosted through lawenforcement.social. We are hosting actually one more of our advanced classes in collaboration with PORAC. And there's going to be a lot of the associations there, like I talked about earlier, who are trying to navigate putting out their messages. So we'll be hosting that up in their headquarters in Sacramento. And then we'll be doing a conference where we'll be talking about all that stuff in November in Palm Springs as well.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about the conference. Is it just for law enforcement? Is it open to the public?
So it's for public safety and government. We're going to be having a bunch of guest speakers come in, different instructors talking about things like legal issues, how to run press conferences properly, what's some of the legislation that's involved in managing social media, what are your best practices to get engagement, how to create content, so really how to manage the platforms. So that's going to be coming up November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Again, it's in Palm Springs in November, guys. I mean, that's like, if that's not enough to get you there, I don't know what is. So it'll be a lot of fun, a lot of vendors, giveaways. We're having
Right, you're going to have some well-known people there.
We are. So we're going to be having some different keynote speakers there. We haven't publicly announced, so you guys will have to follow along, but I promise you, you will not be disappointed by our instructors, by our keynotes that are going to be there. Going to be some big names who are prevalent in being a voice for the law enforcement and public safety community. So anybody who works in government and public safety, this is definitely going to be where you're going to learn the latest and greatest and be able to network and really improve how you're communicating with your community.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. That's a good teaser. And if they want to know more, they're just going to have to follow Tamron or Talk Public Relations. That's TOC, not TALK. TOC.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we've, in the, of course, we're not going to learn everything in this 30-minute session, but I think for our listeners that want to learn more, Tamron's a wealth of knowledge and she's worth following.
And I just want to throw out there too, that you're not just teaching in California or even Southern California. You've been going out of state too. So if you guys, she goes everywhere with her company and can teach all over the country. So don't be afraid.
Yeah, I do. I travel. I was in Arizona last week. I've been teaching in Texas, certified to instruct there. So wherever you need me, I will be there.
Awesome.
Yeah. And Tamron is part of the law enforcement family. So if there's any reason why you should be supporting her, if you're looking for a PR firm, she's part of the family. So
she is. She's the it girl.
Well, thanks for joining us, Tamron. You are a wealth of knowledge, and we'd love to have you again sometime if you're willing to join us.
Oh, of course. We definitely need to stay in contact and do another one. I know that you guys do a lot in being the voices for the law enforcement community, and I have so much respect for you guys, how you're able to get your message out there, also be professional, and really kind of show the public and the law enforcement community a different side and a different perspective. So thank you so much for all of your guys' support.
You don't have to say that, Tamron. You're already on the show. That's fine.
Well,
but I love you guys.
I'm kidding.
No, but to your point, I am privileged to have Kristen as a partner. Kristen is not only a good friend of mine, but I totally respect what you do on social media for being a voice for dispatchers. I can't think of anybody else that is willing to stick her neck out there. There are dispatcher pages out there that are meme pages, and they provide great stress relief and entertainment. But you are actually you're doing it, and not only doing it, you're doing it not on social media. Also, you're part of the FBI National Academy where you teach resilience training. Yeah, and I don't know any other dispatcher in the country that does that. And I'm privileged to have you as my partner. And thank you for the kind words, Tamron. And thank you guys for we know you have to listen to any podcast, and we appreciate you bringing us into your homes, your offices, and on your drive. So thank you for joining us on the 911 Strong podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the 911 Strong podcast with Aram and Kristen. If you like this episode, please check out our other episodes, and don't forget to tell your friends. Find us on Instagram and smash that follow button. Thanks again for listening and for your loyal support. See you next time.